Hey everybody, welcome to Chalk Talk presented by Bearmail, the show where we talk with sports marketing leaders who share their email marketing and SMS wins one play at a time, all with the goal to help you, the listeners, grow fan engagement and ticket sales. I'm your host, Chris Behrens. I'm the founder and CEO of Bearmail, where we help professional sports teams and organizations sell and engage more fans through personalized email and SMS marketing solutions. After spending nearly the last decade in my career helping professional sports organizations win on and off the field with email and SMS, I wanted to give back to the sports community by connecting with marketing leaders in the sports industry and having them share their stories about email and SMS, what's working, what isn't, and what's really moving the needles for email and CRM programs. Today, I have the awesome privilege of speaking with Aidan Edrich, Data and CRM Manager at the LPGA. Aidan graduated from the University of Florida with a degree in sport and fitness administration and management. And after graduation, Aidan joined the Orlando Magic as a CRM and business strategy graduate associate, supporting the team with business strategy, CRM administration tasks, data visualization, and data analysis. From there, in his current role, Aidan is with the LPGA as a data and CRM manager with a focus on data strategy, revenue growth, and customer lifecycle management. Aidan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So excited to be talking to you today. And we've had really great conversations historically, but for those of you who don't know we've been chatting for the last 6 months and we getting to know Aidan a little bit more about the LPGA and some of the programs he's running. But for the listeners, would love to tip things off for you. Tell us how you ended up in the sports and entertainment world and what your career path has looked like to get you to your current position.
Absolutely. So around my senior year, I was looking into learning Salesforce. I thought Salesforce would be a great tool to learn, familiarize myself with. I had an inkling being in sports management that sports was my path. I've always loved sports growing up as a kid. And the opportunity to intersect a career and working in sports, I was like, this is too good to be true. So one thing led to another, and I would honestly credit where I am today to networking, just reaching out to individuals like yourself and others in the sports industry and just trying to learn more about what their day-to-day looks like in that CRM capacity. My first opportunity led me to working at my alma mater with the University Athletic Association in revenue generation and analytics. That was just great based on exposure to what this world has to offer. And in turn, I was the CRM graduate associate with the Orlando Magic for a year, and getting the opportunity to work at a very mature organization that does things right and has been doing things right for a long time has really helped set the standard for my next challenge, which is working at the LPGA, where we're building something really exciting from the ground up. And I can't wait to continue building that.
That's awesome. I love that story. And, I think one of the cool parts about your background is that you've seen sports marketing from a few different aspects. You've seen it from the college athletics side, you've seen it from the team side, and now you're seeing it from the league side as well. So from your perspective, I think with your unique background, what do you feel like great email marketing really looks like from your perspective?
So to your point, Chris, I've had experience in the collegiate sphere, in the NBA sphere, and now in the golf sphere. And I think at all three of those organizations, how email marketing and CRM strategy looks is so variant. And I think that's also one of the beauties about sports. So at the end of the day, yes, it is CRM, it is email, but the kind of communication and the kind of strategy that you have based on whether it's a season ticket holder that's been a University of Florida alumni for the last 40 years versus a Magic season ticket holder that's in that first 1 to 2 years of becoming a season ticket holder, to our LPGA fans, which are now receiving more communications than they ever have. I think one attribute that doesn't change based on the industry you're in is agility. So the ability to just adapt and change. Something you had said to me previously, which stood out, was something might work in email one day, but it might not work tomorrow. And then it might work again the next day. So I think it's just an ever-changing cycle. And also something that I've seen at the LPGA so far is depending on the content and the timing of that content, we see variance in how people tend to engage with an email. And then also if you throw in something like a push notification or an SMS, I think that also has an influence on what your email cycle and strategy looks like.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought up the different channels as well, because the fan experience isn't just, an email conversation. CRM isn't just an email conversation. It's a much broader conversation now as the space has matured to make it be really a data-driven conversation around the fan experience across wherever they end up being, whether that's email, SMS, or push, or other channels as well, such as paid media or your website too. How do we use data to really drive actions that feel personalized to the fan experience is really where the space is evolving, and that's really what's exciting to me. And I think when we think about your experience too on the team side and the college space and on the league side as well, I think you probably have a really unique perspective as well around what tactics may be interesting or game-changing to explore for each of those types of spaces, or maybe one space in particular. Can you talk about, a tactic that you've seen work really well in your time that you feel like is a game-changing approach to how individuals should approach CRM within the sports space?
So I'll start with something that's not necessarily a marketing tactic per se, but I think, especially from my background, I think it's something very important to successful marketing tactics, and that's just process. So how do you set up a back-end process to best enable your marketing and communications team to fulfill their responsibilities? One of my first tasks at the LPGA was to pat down and get that process in a place where it needs to be in order for our email team to do what they need to do, which is sending out emails in a timely manner to different segments. And that can be an issue sometimes when we have multiple tournaments. So if we have a tournament running on the Epson Tour side, if we have a tournament running on the LPGA circuit, and then we also have an announcement that needs to go out to partners, those are 3 different types of messages that go to 3 different types of groups. And for me, it was just, how can I get this process to be as clean, as standardized, and as efficient as possible? And I think with some trial and error and with some very, very nice SQL, we have been able to streamline that process to the point where I will get a communication from our email marketing specialist saying, hey, can we get this segment ready for 10 a.m. today? And within 5 minutes, we're able to get that segment pushed and uploaded. And I think there's value in that you don't necessarily see on just like the pure marketing side. Like, there's not a statistic in your database that's going to tell you, oh, we're actually able to send out emails 5 times as quick as we were last year. And I think there's value in that, whether it's like a marginal gain or whether we start seeing that significantly. And then I'll give one tidbit around marketing specific. So something that we are newly looking into is around revenue attribution, and how can we best track revenue attribution through links that we have via SeatGeek. And whether that's a web link, whether it's an email link, whether it's a push notification, we were drawing up a scenario where it's just like, all right, if we're sending a ticketing push notification to a user, what does that journey look like? Is someone more likely to open a push notification at 10 a.m. that's saying, hey, tune into this tournament? Is that more likely to have an impact, or is the same email that's pushing for a ticket purchase likely to have an impact of that ticket purchase? I think drawing out those scenarios has been interesting for us, just because push notifications are a new entity with the LPGA. But yeah, like that was something that I think really spurred my mind, was just like, all right, like me personally, if I got a push notification that says, hey, click here to buy tickets, I'm thinking, am I more likely to be like, oh, cool, I saw that push notification, I'm going to go buy tickets. Waits 3 hours, and then, oh, I just remembered I got a push notification to buy tickets, I'm going to go straight to SeatGeek and buy those tickets. It doesn't correlate to that link that we sent in the push notification. But like, that's just an interesting food for thought exercise that we're starting to work through at the LPGA. Just how can we best use our channels to get the message that we intend to get across to our consumers?
Absolutely. I love both of those examples, and I particularly love that you led with process, because it's one of the most neglected areas for marketing operations that a team really starts to think about. When I think about what professional sports organizations often do, is think about how do we have technology and people be at a certain level where we can capitalize on delivering on all of our outcomes. But if your process is really inefficient or ineffective, then you can't get campaigns out the door to actually achieve your goal and take advantage of the great technology you have and the great people you have. So I love that you included process, because frankly, that's one of the places I always love to start when I work with new sports organizations or teams, is figuring out, how do we get campaigns out the door as efficient and effective manner as possible, so we can have time to focus on the higher level strategies and the higher level thinking that we all want to think about. And that's, how do we automate the fan experience, and how do we send out lifecycle campaigns, and how do we trigger communications based off of fan behavior, some of those really higher level order of activities. And so when you think about process, like you said, it's not just a marginal gain on gaining efficiencies for that specific campaign. It allows you to do other things that you just didn't have time for before. So I really love that you shared that example first off. And I also love that you're focused on revenue attribution as well, particularly across channels, because ultimately one of the hardest things to figure out often is understanding, where do I spend my time, and where's the best space to send this next message to for the fan experience to get them to do what I believe they should be doing next. And push, email, SMS, they all intersect with that, but it's a broader touch point conversation, and just trying to understand what's going to move the needle forward from my marketing program perspective. Where do I send my next message to make sure that I'm driving the most ticket sales, I'm driving the best fan engagement for my organization. So I love both of your examples. Those are great.
Yep. And for us, I think one of the really exciting things is just data warehouse, business intelligence, and that whole concept of strategy around that is just starting to develop. And I think one of the advantages of the position we're in is that, being a later adopter of this, we've got to kind of see, what's good, what's bad, what works, what doesn't. And omni-channel marketing, I think that's really where things are heading. It's not really just about email. Email is not our main channel anymore. Push isn't our main channel. It's really about an intersection, and how do you maximize using all those channels? So what you just said, how do you maximize using all those channels to get to your different consumers and those touch points, and then orchestrating a journey around that that's as seamless and engaging as possible?
I love that. And I love that you mentioned too that while it feels like you may be a late mover in the data warehouse space, you have bypassed many of the growing pains that other teams or leagues, organizations have really experienced along that path of maturing from being not a data-driven organization to having data be the fuel that drives what their marketing looks like moving forward. So it's really cool that you're on the precipice of, starting that venture and really realizing the value of doing that exercise. So that's fantastic. I love that. And I think that leads me well to the kind of next line of questioning that I have for you, is thinking about, you mentioned process as kind of a game-changing tactic. Where do you feel like teams or organizations in the sports space are really sleeping on from a CRM marketing perspective today?
And I can start this by pleading my ignorance of my very young career. I could be off the mark on this specific matter of what someone's sleeping on or not. But then again, also, I think, circling back, I do think it really depends on the league and where your organization's at maturity wise in terms of what you're able to do. I think, going back to this point of omni-channel marketing, just because I really do think it's prevalent, I think the perception of personalization and what people are consuming and how they want to consume it, I think there's a difference between knowing attributes and preferences of a fan and creating a curated experience around that, to understanding how a fan wants to engage. So I think taking fans' behaviors that you're seeing in data points is one thing, but then it's, how do you translate that? Just like any other data analyst is going to do. How do you take raw data? So how do you take what a fan lists as their preferences, their behaviors, their favorite players, and how do you integrate that with customability and engagement to further enhance your customer lifecycle? And I'm not saying the teams aren't doing it, but an example that we keep bringing around is collecting favorite player data. So something that I always can draw back to is, if your favorite player is making a run at the US Open, and we know who your favorite player is, and we can send you a push notification saying, hey, X, your favorite player, Jane Doe, is currently 9 under and heading into the back 4 holes of the US Open, tune in. Or your favorite player just made a hole in one congrats, here's 10% off merchandise.
Right.
And those are just two examples that I think of, but I think it's really defining, okay, we have these customer attributes and we get more and more customer data as time goes on. Even at where our stage of maturity, I mean, we still have, I think, a pretty good amount of data points, but in today's day and age, I mean, it's like you can collect as much data as you want, but then how do you translate that into the most successful strategy for your organization? So I think that's an area where it's still slept on, because it's not something that is league-wide. It's not something that's sports worldwide. It's just, how do you differentiate and separate yourself from an email marketing standpoint by utilizing all of these customized attributes?
I love that. I love that response in so many ways, because so many sports organizations and organizations in general are very data rich, but very marketing insights and actions poor, meaning they have so much data about their customers, but they don't really understand what's in the data and what story it's telling, and then how to transform what their marketing looks like based off of what the data is saying. And your two examples are really great, because it's very practical data and very practical executions to send out the door for fans to have a significantly better experience than they're having today, which, many communications for most organizations would be, one size fits all. But if you can translate that into a moment that matters for them, to say, I want to celebrate the wins with you because your favorite player just made a hole in one. Let's celebrate together by giving you a little special discount on something that we wouldn't have otherwise done. That feels special. That feels personalized, and that feels targeted. And that's really what fans want at the end of the day, is to feel like their voice is heard and their data is actually used in a way that adds value to their experience. So I love that example so much.
Yeah. And I mean, I know that this is a theme in the sports world where it's like now, I mean, I don't even know if this was maybe realized 30 years ago, but most fans aren't going to physically attend your events, whether that's an NBA game. For us, I mean, we're a global tour. So we have fans all over the world, but in reality, how many of them are actually going to physically show up to a tournament? Maybe 1%, but that other 99%, if they're still engaging with our content, they could still be a fan. I mean, and that's not a new comment to the sports world. It's like I think there's been a bigger focus on your fans that aren't showing up. And I think that's where organizations have to get creative. Your fans that aren't showing up, where can you drive revenue? Where can you drive engagement? How can you make a difference to that fan for them to essentially feel like they're there?
100%. That's a really well way to articulate that, because like you said, particularly with some leagues or some teams, there will always be a much higher percentage of people in your database. They're simply just not going to attend because they logistically cannot, because they're geographically removed from the stadium or the location where the event is happening, or there's simply not enough tickets to even get them in the stadium in the first place. So I love that example, because I think it's becoming more and more prevalent of a topic for sports teams to think about, because it's something that the narrow-minded focus around simply driving ticket sales, while it's crucial for every sports organization to think about, it's just a piece of the puzzle when you think about broader fan engagement strategies and driving value for not just the fan experience, but for the organization overall from a revenue perspective. So I'm glad you brought that up. Awesome. Well, I'll leave you with one final question. So I know that you've been in the space now for a few years in your career. For any team or any organization that's really trying to grow fan engagement or ticket sales through CRM marketing, what's the big piece of advice you would give for them as a starting point?
So I might have touched on this a little bit with some of my examples before, but I think it still holds true. And I think for me, this is the biggest component. Well, sorry, two-pronged is this answer, but I think process, to what we spoke about earlier, process is like, you got to have process. I don't think anything can happen without process, because when you think about it, process allows for you to scale, and process also allows for you to be agile. So, I mean, I think first and foremost is just getting your processes standardized, and also like not resting on your laurels and just, sitting down and being like, all right, we came up with a good process. Cool. That process might not work in 6 months, depending on what happens to your tech stack. Maybe a new leader comes in. Maybe there's just a change and a shift in industry. We never know nowadays. So I think process in terms of setting it up and refining it is one prong of this. And I think the other prong is just adding value. So how you can add value changes by the day, by the time, by the organization. And I think just like being proactive and knowing your strengths as an organization and then applying that to a value add for your consumers, whether that be a push notification, whether that's on site, whether that's on a broadcast. I think just continuing to find unique ways to identify and, build your brand as an organization. I think that goes a long way. And that's something I saw with the Magic. And it's stuck with me since.
I love that. Adding value to the fan experience is something that I think many organizations don't always have as their top of mind mindset. And I think most organizations think about adding value in terms of we must throw another discount at our fans, or we must figure out a creative way to package the same thing at a lower price. But it doesn't always have to be a price consideration. It can also just be a personalization value perspective, or intersecting them in a moment that matters to them and adding value to their experience, whether they're at your event or participating in your digital marketing experience that you're putting on. So I love thinking about it from a value perspective as well, because I think ultimately, and the data will show this consistently for any organization you work with, is that if you engage people at a much higher rate, they're going to spend more money with you. And it might not always be directly attributable to specific campaigns, but if you think about what's the way I can add value to fans today, that's going to translate to the bottom line tomorrow. So
100%. And I think for me also, it's got to be authentic. Authenticity is really going to drive anything at the end of the day. And like you said, it might not be direct, but that's where the authenticity comes into it. It's like, if you want to engage in organic growth, I think throughout all that process we just spoke about, I think authenticity is huge. I think about the Brewers, just like with the whole pocket pancake situation, that's cool. But also the team is capitalizing on that media, that opportunity. So I think that also plays into it as well.
Yeah, capturing in the moment magic is something that teams can absolutely think about doing more based off of the Brewers example. There's plenty of other examples out there too, and I know that one's top of mind for recency, of course. But like you said, if you can intersect your brand with something that's happening, in the moment, whether that's to your team or with pop culture too, that's always something that's really valuable to the fan experience and thinking about adding value to them. So I love that. Well, fantastic. It's been great to connect with you, Aidan. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Aidan, sharing your amazing insights and your career progression. And I really love your specific focus around process and really nailing the fundamentals to allow you to explore kind of higher level thinking at the LPGA. I think you're on a really fascinating progression for where you're at with the organization right now. So thanks for sharing your stories and thanks for sharing your insights. Listeners, that's all for now. Until next time, we'll see you on the next Chalk Talk presented by Bear Mail.